Chris Nunn. Good evening, actually.
Good evening. Thank you.
Mate, you are the first interview or conversation that I've had where you're in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Good to be here.
Very close too, mate. You're in Arizona. So very close to
Mm,
Austin, Texas.
mm.
What are you doing there? What are you doing in Arizona?
Mate, I've just come here for like a decompress.
Mm.
Went over to Europe with the family, and that was pretty action packed. So just come here to chill
So
for
it's
a few days.
it's a retreat
Yeah,
and you're on your own for a week and you're doing all the health and wellness stuff.
absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. And you felt you need, I mean, it's now the last week of August. You felt now was a good time to take that.
Yeah, I did. I got no options next week,
Yeah.
and we've wrapped a few as well. So I thought it was a good time.
Good on you, mate. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Nunn, introduction. With him and I, we've known each other for a long time, but Chris is a director at Bresic Whitney and has been for several years. You started with us in 2010, so you've been there now nearly 14 years. Chris started at Europe Politics. I love this story, mate. I remind
Yeah, I
you,
was.
you were a Politics store manager, which is a fashion label. How do you describe Politics? What sort of label is that?
Oh, European fashion. Yeah, men's fashion.
So you
Yeah.
start there. How did you get in? Just briefly, how did you
Yep.
get into real estate?
Yeah, so I was 25 years old. I bought my first apartment in Redfern, and the following year I bought a house in Alexandria. But in all the obsessing and looking at houses, I just never stopped. And I'd read a few books that said you can, monetize your obsessions and, all that, turn it into gold and yada yada. So I thought it would probably be a good idea to sell some bigger ticket items and
And
let the
so how did
gains.
and you've done so well. And I'm going to just share with people, if you don't mind, just some of your growth. But how did you get that? BW was your first job in real estate?
Yeah, I've only had two jobs since I was 20,
Fantastic. How did you get
10,
into
10
BW?
years.
How did you make that job? How did you get the job at BW? How did you make that transition? I actually don't remember that.
Yeah, so look, 2010 was a pretty big year. I quit my job. My wife and I flew around the world. Um, while I was away, I had a couple of health things. When I got back, I found out I had cancer, and and at the same time, I was also interviewing for a job in real estate. So I saw Matt LaHood from
Yeah.
McGrath. I saw Shannon Whitney. Um, I got the cancer removed the night before I went and worked with Shannon for the day.
Wow.
I went and worked with Shannon, and for that day and halfway through the day, he said, you've got a cane. Are you okay? And I said, yeah, I actually got a cancer removed last night. Sorry if I'm talking a bit strange. I'm still under the effect of the anesthetic. I threw up on the way to see you this morning. That was the beginning.
Wow. Wow. I remember that. Chris, you've got how many kids now?
I got three.
So three
Yeah.
kids, father. Um,
Mm.
I remember Chris had I'd say your first few years were really bumpy and slow. How long was
Yeah,
that? Those first few years? How
absolutely.
many
Yeah, a
years
few
did
years.
you, yeah, how would you say that was 3 or a 5 year thing?
Oh, probably three because I remember I stepped out after 4 years. So it was maybe 2.5 to 3 clunky. Year 3 to 4 accelerated. I think I sold about 20 properties and then stepped out in year four.
Good on you. Well done. And so
Mm.
Chris worked through the ranks. You worked with one of our old colleagues, Matt, I think, in the
Yeah,
first few years, who moved
yeah,
on.
yeah.
Um, and then you became a standalone agent in the inner west. Your main specialty, what suburbs would you say your specialty?
Now,
Yeah.
it really would be the whole inner west, but focusing sort of a bit more keenly on Annandale and Glebe.
Yeah, and it's great we speak today because I know last week you got awarded the second number two agent at Bresic Whitney, which is a great achievement because there's so many good
Mm,
agents there.
yeah,
Saw your list of sales too. You've had about 60 sales this year, and we haven't quite finished August. Is that right?
yeah. It might be more, but yeah,
So
about that.
let's call it 60 to 65 sales,
Yeah,
two-thirds of the year in. I saw
yeah,
you've got a nice average sale price. I saw the $6 million sale in Glebe earlier this year
yeah,
with lots of
yeah,
threes and fours.
yeah.
So mate, well done. I mean, that's been like after that initial apprenticeship of 3 years with Maddie, that's
Mm,
11 years on your own to gone through. And I know you've been a top REB agent and stuff like that. I'm really interested today, Chris, I want to hear about the struggle, like when you first
mm,
start. Like,
yeah.
what did you do when you first started? What were the activities that you were taught to do, or what were the ones that worked for you going back, 8 years?
Yeah, when I started, it did sort of feel like very much like the blind leading the blind a lot. In my sort of just in my smaller incubator sort of team within the company.
Yeah,
I think the good thing about you and Shannon is you wouldn't get too overly involved in what other teams were doing. Sort of until people sort of progressed and migrated. Sort of maybe up a bit more,
yeah,
which I actually thought was a good thing. You weren't sort of stepping on people's toes. You were letting people kind of learn and go through the struggle themselves.
yes.
I used to go home and say to my wife, "Look, I think I'm going to get fired tomorrow." So for about the first 18 months, I think I'm going to get fired. To be honest, like that Matty who I was working, he used to say, "Mate, I don't know if I can afford to keep you." That was serious.
Shit. But I mean,
So he said,
2010, 11 were off the back of GFC. We're that was a new office, Glebe.
mm, mm,
We were real, I mean, Darlinghurst was strong. This was our second location. You were part of
"Yep,
the original crew there. We
yeah,
didn't have much market share. We were just starting out. So I can see why it was
true."
pretty
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that it was a struggle. Like you'd say Bresic Whitney in the inner west and people wouldn't know who we were, and we were very much a new kid on the block. But I think that was great in a lot of ways though, because it allowed me to sort of be a part of I guess leveling up the business and kind of raising our standards and plugging in. But yeah, for the first 18 months I barely knew how to string a buyer appointment together.
That's funny, mate. Well, mate, you've done
Mm,
so well. You've got it. You've always had a interesting style. It's worked for you. And
mm,
I guess everyone's unique, right? We're all unique. We all have our own
mm,
strengths, areas that we could probably do better at. Well, how would you
mm.
describe your style? I know how I would describe your style, but I'm keen. How would you describe your style?
Yeah, I always struggle with it, with that question, because it does sort of feel like a don't try this at home sort of a style or strategy.
It works though, mate. It works for you. So,
It does. It does. I guess I've thought about it. So I think there are agents that are more process and procedure, and there are agents that are more relationship. The only thing is, often when you talk about a relationship agent, I think you're often talking about someone that maybe sort of more comfortable around 15 to 25 deals a year.
yeah,
Whereas to be a volume agent, at sort of, I think we have hit 100 deals before
yes,
a couple of years ago. It's rarer to have a relationship agent that also sort of can hit volume.
yeah.
So it would be relationship. Yeah.
And having gone through this, having started fresh in the industry in your late 20s or mid 20s, um, and having climbed these highs, like started in a team, standalone, employed people, 20 sales a year, 30 sales a year, 50 sales a year, 80 sales a year, 100 sales a year, REB, associate, director of the business. So you've
Mm,
pretty much, you've climbed this huge mountain that many people don't. You're in that
mm,
top few percent of the industry.
mm.
Um, what do you think? Do you think that journey, for those that want that, how long do you think that journey takes?
For
No,
most, probably a decade,
yeah, yeah.
I reckon.
And at what
Yeah,
point did you, because you said in the first 2 years that you thought you might lose your job. At what point did
definitely.
you go, I'm actually pretty good at this?
Probably, probably year, maybe 2.5 years in
Mm.
3 years. Yeah, about year three.
And what was the turning point? Do you remember?
Um, I think I realized I actually heard you reference once when you were talking about Shannon and you in the beginning. You said we sort of treated it a little bit like a game.
Yeah.
I started to realize like, hey, like you start to sort of crack the code of like, oh, okay, one thing leads to another, and then you do this, and actually, it's not that hard. So when you start thinking that actually this is not that hard,
Mm.
and it's fun. It's fun when you when you get a roll on and you start to enjoy your clients more and enjoy the conversations more, and yeah, so
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Not for
then
it's not for the faint-hearted though, this industry.
no, there's a lot of rejection, heaps.
Do you
That's
think
hard.
that do you think that the rejection piece is the only challenging thing or the most challenging thing?
Well, they refer to obviously wives of real estate agents at this sort of level as like real estate widows. So there's that,
Yeah.
trying to make sure that I'm a good dad and I, keep a keen eye on what they're doing and make sure they know they're loved. Um, that can be a struggle just because of the hours and the psychological load.
Yeah.
Um, I think if you're doing 10 properties, if you got 10 properties or 10 campaigns you're running for that month, it's pretty absorbing.
Yeah.
So, so,
Yeah.
so psychologically, it can be hard, can be tough.
Yeah. I think you've summed it up beautifully, actually. Like you've just said, well, time pressure, the commitment it takes to do it at a high level is enormous. You do miss out on quality time with family, kids, friends. So there's enormous sacrifice involved. There's always rejection. So you've got to get comfortable with rejection and dealing with that and just moving on.
Mm,
Um, so I think you've summed it up really well. And also you've said the emotional strain. So if you're listing and selling at a high level like you have for many years,
mm,
that's 10 vendors, that's 10 maybe buyers who are cautious that you have to speak to. There's 10 settlements going on. Then you've got a team. So you're having to look after, your other children, which are your
mm,
associates and
mm,
assistant. It's a
mm.
tough gig, but it's not for
They
everybody.
look, they look after me.
Well, they do, you're right. But still,
Mm,
if they've got a problem, who do they go to?
yeah,
They go to you because you're their
yeah,
leader, you're their coach.
mm,
So it
mm,
is it is really taxing. Mate, you've had a
mm,
great you and I have had a good friendship for many years. We haven't spoken as much
mm,
since I left the company, but it's been good to
mm,
connect with you in the last few months.
mm.
Nick Playfair was an agent who started young with you.
Yep.
You guys created a really good team when I was there. He moved on. So how does it feel as a super team? Oh, how does it feel as an elite team or a high performing
Mm,
team to lose your number one associate, who was a good income generator for the team?
mm.
How did you ask him to move on? Did he want to move on? How did that work out?
Yeah, yeah. Nick's excellent. He's a great guy and a great agent. He was with me for a decade, so
Yeah.
he probably talked about moving on sort of 3 years before he did, and 2 years before he did, and a year before he did. Um, but when he did actually go, he left on sort of the best terms with me imaginable.
Yeah.
He did it at a time where it was the right time for our business. He did it at a time that was the right time for him,
Yes.
psychologically as well, which was really important. I think if he left 3 years earlier, I think he might have had a real tough time psychologically.
Yes.
So I can't stress that enough. I think it's really important to go at the right time, not just because you think you should. Of course it had a financial impact on the business, which we quickly sort of strive to try to fill. But I'm super proud of Nick. He was just in the top 10 agents in the company. So
Yeah.
lot of love, lot of love for him.
Yeah. And he's a great kid. And he'll always remember you and thank you for that. Like
Mm,
I worked under Shannon in the
mm,
early years at McGrath's. Then we became business partners.
mm,
My loyalty was with John McGrath initially.
mm,
But once Shannon looked after me so well, and then I became a standalone, my loyalty was with Shannon.
mm,
Um, and like with the whole BW thing, the Bresic Whitney thing, I think I probably could have made more money being an agent in some respects, but you can't take
mm.
away, Chris, that you've developed Nick.
Yeah.
No one can take that away from you. And
Mm,
and like same as a lot of the things that me and Shannon did with a lot of the agents, even agents that moved on and became competitors and directors of other
mm,
companies, they still
mm,
remember the fact that we played a big part. And I remember that in their
mm,
development. And you can't take that away.
mm.
Well done,
Yeah.
mate. Um,
Thank you.
if I was starting in real estate, if I started working in the Chris Nunn team
Mm,
and I had no real estate experience,
mm.
what would you tell me to do on day one and for the first 12 months?
Focus on buyers.
That's it.
Just focus on buyers.
Okay,
Yeah.
where will I
Um,
find them in a market like this, which is challenging?
Previous campaigns that we've run.
Okay.
Just go through all the old books. In Bresic Whitney, we don't really have any restrictions. Obviously, you know this. You
Yep.
know, they can call through anyone's book. Um, yeah, there's a beast of activity for them to do just in those old books. A lot of gold in those books. I remember probably yourself and Shannon asking, way back when, well, how to get going, how to sort of
Build momentum.
build momentum. Absolutely. And the one thing that I do sort of remember is there's no difference between searching for a vendor or servicing a buyer, or trying to service a vendor or trying to service a buyer. Like, it's all just the same pot of people. And then I realized, like, oh yeah, wow, like, why would I sit there trying to call the six owners that I might have, figured out own a house, when I could be calling 600 buyers?
Yeah.
Like which one of those do you think is going to get you more penetration and more momentum faster? Of course, calling through the 600 people.
Yeah. I mean, I love hearing this. I speak to a lot of agents and do a lot of these conversations. Obviously, I've got a soft spot for BW, but and whenever I have a conversation with a BW agent, we're always on the same page, like the same. It's what we taught. We know it works, so it's an easier conversation. I understand it. You explain it. It's amazing how many agents don't like go the other way and just look for listings and door knock and whatever.
Yeah, no, look, most agents I talk to outside of BW, like, there's probably been some progression now, just in the way that the world sort of gets a bit smarter and a bit more tactile. But most agents I've spoken to over the years just don't have really struggle with it. The idea of letting go of your contacts, and sharing information.
Yeah. Gold there for everybody. If you're starting in real estate, coming from Chris, he got in fresh start, focused on buyers, worked in someone else's team, built relationships, built his database. Chris was selling 20 sales, after a few years, which is what most of the industry does. Most of the industry sells between 15 and 35 a year. So Chris had to go through that and then excelled and excelled and excelled. Chris, we spoke about, I remember that warehouse you sold. It was one of the best listings you sold at the time. It was a bit of a breakthrough sale for you. I think it was in Annandale or Stanmore. Do you remember the one?
Yes, and yeah, Annandale, 22 Nelson Street, Joe Sidoti,
That one.
SQ Projects. Yeah.
Beautiful warehouse. It was a big listing at the time. I can't recall how you won it. I'm sure you remember. But it was a really important sale. And that was when I was there. So it must have been, it must have been a few years before I left. So it must have been at least 7 years ago, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. So someone like you're scratching around, getting a little bit of listings here and there, and then you get this cracker listing, which at the time was a $4 or $4.5 million warehouse,
Yes.
which
Yep.
today would be seven. Okay, I
Hmm.
would think maybe
Yep.
more. So that was a turning point for you, from what I
It
saw.
was.
Someone looking at the business and going, "Shit, Chris has now got that," and then I remember you selling it. How
Mm.
important was that a sale for the type of properties you now list and for your confidence and things like? How did you get it? And
Yeah.
how was that a turning point in your sales career?
So, to be honest, it was Nick Playfair that had the relationship there that got us in the door.
Good.
So that's good on Nico.
Mm.
Yeah, look, very monumental, that sale. Obviously, it was an incredible sale, and there was sort of 200 people at the auction and the
Yeah,
media and all that.
it was.
Um, but interestingly, a week later, ear, nose, and throat surgeon called me to sell his place in Annandale, and I almost lost it. Probably just due to inexperience, but yeah, I almost lost it. And then just at the 11th hour, the other agent he was dealing with must have annoyed him more than I did. So he called me and he gave it to me, and then we got that sold by the skin of our teeth as well.
Yeah.
So and then yeah, I was quite shocked how quickly the market turn around and go, oh, you're the
You're
premium
that
guy,
guy.
just
Yeah.
just for two sales. The
Yeah.
market's pretty fickle and pretty quick to make a judgment, good or bad. So
Yeah. So if you think about that for everybody who's listening or watching, Chris is grinding his way through. he's getting traction on terraces and apartments through someone in his team gets a great warehouse opportunity, lists it, sells it. It was in the paper. Yeah, like you said, over 200 people look at it or more, or people, 200 people at the auction or whatever. Huge book that you could then work with other people who have premium homes in the inner west.
Mm.
Then you get a listing off the back of that. And then now we're talking several years later, and your average sale price is 3.5 or 4 million, which isn't, or between 3 and 4, which in the inner west is premium, right?
Mm. So, yep.
So what I take away from that is if you're an agent, you got to keep grinding, but then there's certain listings that come across your way. If you're in the right place, right time, you've done the work, you create your own kind of luck.
Yep.
And that just
It,
opens the
it
door for who knows what's down there.
absolutely, like, in terms of how that unfolded, I have noticed over the years, sometimes you've got an agent that will just come up with a real, amazing listing. Could be it was a family connection or what have you. But I've often noticed, like, yeah, one or maybe two if they're lucky. But I've often noticed where, nothing came of it. Nothing, they didn't actually sort of take that and grab a hold and like pick
And
up all the
capitalize.
momentum. Yeah,
Yeah.
just it
Yeah.
just kind of it just went away to nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always think about that sale. That's
Yeah, I think
yeah.
you did. Yeah, what you're saying is due to your skill and the fact that you've been building for a number of years, that you're able to leverage and scale from that opportunity,
Mm,
build your database, work the open house book like you had all the other stuff in the 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. You did it the same way, but at this level,
mm,
which then meant he's an owner in Johnson Street, Annandale. There's an owner in Boy Street, Glebe. Here's another warehouse owner in Camperdown. I'm going
yeah,
to put them in my list and stay in touch with them. And
yeah,
now all of a sudden, 1 or 2 premium listings in 1 year becomes 6 the next year, which becomes 12 the next year. And now you're selling 24 houses a year over 3.5 million.
yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful story. Love it. Mate, you said that there's process driven agents, and I agree with you. I was one of those.
Mm,
And then
mm,
there's more relationship agents. So I'd say
mm,
Oddie, who's one of your co-directors, is more relationship.
mm,
I'd say Liddell's more a process type agent, and
absolutely,
they complement each other well. Um,
definitely.
so if as a relationship type agent, tell me about your database work. Like, are you
Yep,
how does that how do you work it? What's your system?
yep. So it's pretty freestyle.
Yeah,
I don't sit there and comb through it day after day after day after day.
yeah,
I do find I have enough people I've got to get back to and enough people that I've got to reach out to that I know kind of right here.
yes,
Shannon, I actually found that way
yes,
largely. Like I know
yeah,
he's got his notebook and he jots things down, but that's kind of more like what I am. Like I'll
yes,
kind of I'll jot things down so I remember.
yeah,
Obviously, follow up in any incoming leads, but we get a lot of incoming leads, and that's just through word of mouth. And yeah, not a week goes by, and I'm sure it's the same for Andrew too. And Andrew's such a strong agent, process wise, but also relationship. People
relationship.
love him.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, we just get a lot of we get so much incoming that between the people that I just know inherently that I have to get onto and have to call, I don't do a lot of process driven exercises. Hey, how you going? Remember me?
yes,
I hope you're doing great. I know that's great if you execute that sort of dialogue
yeah,
well. I just never found that it rests well with me.
yeah.
Um,
No, I think,
yeah, I'm
mate,
not
and
comfortable.
there's no right or wrong. Like I speak to so
Mm,
many agents. Like I know
mm,
your style because I've worked with you. And
mm,
Shannon and I were very different. And you're right, you, Shannon, and Oddie are very similar. You work your sales,
yep.
what you work, what's on front of you. You're great at qualifying. You're good in a lounge room in terms of this is why you should use us. You're really strong, not good. You're strong in all these point of sale areas, plus you execute. And like Oddie said to me last week, he said, Ivan, sales create listings. And that's kind of like how you, Shannon, and him kind of operate.
Yep.
So I think that's really great, mate. So you still have a pipeline seller list.
Yes.
You
Yep.
do. And you are you still doing buy work at this point?
Certainly. Yeah. For mainly buyers, sort of the 4 million plus.
Yeah. You know, one challenge that I'm hearing from a lot of agents at the moment, which I'd love
Mm,
your view on, they're
mm,
saying, Ivan, me or my colleagues, we're listing properties off market,
mm,
but because we've got people who want to sell, but they're interested in this off market thing. But the challenge we're having is that their price is way above what the buyers in the market are prepared to pay, and we can't progress them to
mm,
on market, so we're kind
mm,
of stuck.
mm,
Right?
mm,
What's your
mm.
take on that, or how would you deal with that at the moment, given there's some challenges out there?
I mean, number one, are they actually a seller? Because
Good
anyone's a
question.
seller if they get 20% more than it's worth. Yeah, I'm a seller. I'm a
Yeah,
seller right now.
yeah,
So number two, so is it worth your time? Number two, because I guess I think different agents handle the off market process different. So even though yeah, fine, it's off market, but yeah, different agents handle it very differently. So for off market, for starters, if an owner's high, I won't run an off market campaign.
yeah,
Absolute waste of time.
yeah.
Absolute
So if
waste of
they
time.
said we want 5 million,
Hmm.
you think it's 4 to 4.5.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So get through as many 5.5 million, $6 million buyers as we can, and give them as much feedback as we can.
And
So
decide through that process if you think that it's going to be close enough to either get
mm,
a deal done or get them on market to then bridge that gap and do a deal.
absolutely.
If someone
Yeah.
said to you at the moment, Chris, um, we don't need to sell right now,
Mm.
but we're happy to see if our price is there. I know there's a lot of variables, but how would you respond to that at the moment?
Happy happy to take buyers through off market or
Happy to go on market, but this is our
mm.
price and we don't have to sell at the moment.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't typically stop me because if they're prepared to invest, 10
10 grand.
10 grand in marketing and 10, 15, 20 in preparation or whatever they need to do, then odds are they're probably a seller.
Okay.
Just gotta go through and show them. Yeah.
So you're saying if you would work out that if they're prepared to pay for marketing and some style, that there's got to be some motivation there. So you will run that process.
Yeah, I don't think I have many vendors that don't tell me at the beginning of the campaign how much they don't need to sell and
Oh,
how they
okay,
can
yeah,
hold it
true.
for hold it
Yeah,
for
that's
another three
true.
years.
At what
Yeah,
point
usually
would
I take
you?
that as a good sign.
No, no, you're right. At what point would you withdraw a listing? If the
Mm.
owner said, "I want to withdraw it," that's one thing. If they want to keep it on, do you just keep it on?
Um, largely yes, but not without learning and progression. Like I'm not just going to sit there with the same, with the same price point, same strategy, same everything. If it's not working, I usually say to an owner, look, beyond sort of if they're getting that sinking feeling or what have you, it doesn't happen often, but on the times it does, when we stop is when we don't have any buyers coming through that would sort of be actual buyers with money to move forward and the will
Yes.
um, for 2 weeks in a row. So if we don't get any sort of serious punters for 2 weeks in a row, perhaps we call it or you reduce your price.
Yeah, gotcha. Yep, that's a good one. What if you're, and I'm just giving you some vendor objections, and I'm curious how you,
Mm, mm,
what if you're having a period, Chris, when you haven't sold much? Does
mm.
that affect this?
Definitely.
So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean,
how do you deal with that, and how would you coach someone to deal with that?
yeah. Um, probably a similar way to what I've been told, which is it can be a roller coaster. Often, often, often I find you get in your head because you're not you're being too hard on yourself. In that, often when it's slow for you, it's often slow for
Yeah,
your
for others.
competitors as well.
Yeah,
The
true.
amount of times that I'll be so lost in that. If it was it hasn't happened in a while, but be 2 months in, I'm like, oh man, I'm really feeling low, and then I don't realize like Andy's feeling low too, and
Yeah,
Adrian's feeling low, and Shannon never seems to care. I think he's been doing it for long enough that it doesn't phase him. But yeah, and so you quickly realise, oh, you're not alone, and it's. I mean, I've had times where I felt really like, oh man, I'm doing horrible, and then I'll look at a competitor and go, well, he's sold half what you have. How do you
Yes.
think he's feeling? Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah. So you just need to sort of get out of you'll get out of your own head and you'll
mm,
go, hang on, this is across the board. So I've just got to
mm,
check myself here and just keep moving on.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I realised I had someone who was sort of very analytical, like giving sort of me and the team advice around processes and procedures, and I realised there was no point in getting into all that if I couldn't get
Yeah,
the
the
head
mindset.
right. So I
Yeah,
started more focusing on a more how to detach yourself from the outcome sort of a process. So
love
that's
it.
what we focus on there.
I love it, mate. Vendor, man, I'm asking a lot of questions that are pretty relevant at the moment because a lot of the agents are having challenges out there, right? So,
Mm,
what's your, how do you vendor managing some of these, how do you vendor manage? So you sign up something, you'll get it on
yep,
market, and nearly 100% of the vendors out there are high on price now because of the market, right?
yep,
Very few are coming
yep,
into the market here and the market's there. So,
absolutely.
what's your approach to vendor management in today's
Yep.
market?
So quicker is definitely better. Don't leave it until week 3 for God's sake, or week 2. So if we've got to have a meeting, 3 days after we open, then that's what we do. I'm someone who's very much face to face. I know other people have different strategies, Zoom and whatnot, or over the phone. So I think face to face is still important. I'm
Yes,
still sort of old school like that.
that's good.
Um, honestly, anything that I sort of put forward in terms of vendor management is with absolute sincerity. Like I will often say to a vendor, like I would say the same thing if you were my brother or my mum. I'd say the same thing, right? That I'm saying now, which is, you need to consider this. And in terms of leading into an auction, something that I say almost every time, like I don't challenge owners on their reserve. I don't challenge owners on their reserve. In fact, what I say is, like, we're not meeting for me to get your reserve down. If you want to put it up, no problem. But then when we do meet, I say, now I told you I wasn't going to challenge you on your reserve, but if you do want to sell, you're going to probably have to consider between here and here. That's probably where it's going to land at the auction.
Yeah. It's a nice way of building trust because you're saying, look, I'm not going to tell you to drop your reserve or whatever if you want to do whatever you want with the reserve. But as your agent, based on all the buyer feedback and what we've got, we feel that this is where the bidding's going to land. And that's probably where you're going to have to make a decision. Usually we're
Yep.
right. There can be
Yep.
some variation, but usually we're right. So I'll leave that with you and you can go think about that and we'll see you on Saturday.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that, mate. That's really good. Very good. How do you manage? Actually, I've got two questions. What's the biggest mistake you see young agents making?
Oh, um, definitely, definitely thinking that it's about all the wrong things. It's about selling ice to Eskimos and fast cars and nice watches and um, all bling, no substance.
Yeah.
So just being too focused on themselves, and you can sort of smell that straight away, and you kind of know they're probably not going to get to the heights that of the people they're trying to emulate. Um, Biggest mistakes are focusing on trying to focus on looking for
The quick
vendors as
win.
opposed to yeah.
Yeah, the quick wins, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The quick wins, and and if if they're not sort of if they're not sort of getting those quick wins, those quick hits, giving up, pointing fingers, blaming is a big one. Don't blame anyone else. I will always remember, and I you delivered a bit of a tough speech, back in the day, which was, I'm hearing people complaining about, like how many leads they're getting through the office. That the leads are supposed to be the leads are supposed to be
Nice.
secondary, complementary. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so I always remembered that, and like it's never been part of my consciousness. I've never thought like, oh, I haven't got enough leads this month. Like at any point in time, it was never something I thought of. Yeah.
Yeah, you just focused on how do I get better? How can I
Mm,
grow my relationships? What can I do
mm,
today to further my career? How can I climb up the mountain a bit quicker? When
mm.
you became a partner at BW, well done on that, mate.
Thank
And
you.
you deserve that. When you became a partner there, do you recommend it to everyone to become a partner or a director or a business partner or ownership?
It's probably not for everyone. It was an interesting time because COVID, the lockdown had just been announced. I think the announcement of me being a director and lockdown were within the same few weeks, so nobody really cared. But so and it was obviously a time where I was pretty scared. The whole world was pretty scared about what was happening for a little while. Um, as far as yeah, is it for everyone? No, definitely not. Like you got to want to contribute. You've got to want to you got to want probably more than just how many deals can I do and how much money can I make. Um, yeah, you got to sort of want to invest in probably a different way
Yeah.
into the business. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've said that well. Like, it's not for everybody. And if it's something that you aspire to or you're given that opportunity,
Mm,
not only you have to wear a real estate sales and listing hat and a team hat, but now you've got to think about the business as a whole, sit at the table. It's time consuming. You have to make decisions. You'll agree and disagree with others on that table.
mm,
Uh, and sometimes there's dividends and sometimes there's not.
mm. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but I'm a proponent for it. Like, I think being
Mm,
a shareholder of a business that you work at makes you work
mm.
harder, gives you more meaning.
Yep,
We always offered shareholding to our important people, as you know. You were one of them.
yep,
I always
yep.
thought it was a good thing because you can only do so much on your own. So you want other people who contribute at that level there. So I
Yep.
think it's been really good. You're how old now, Chris?
44.
And are you enjoying what you do now that you've been doing this for about 20, 15 years? Are you really enjoying what you do?
I love it. I love working with my team every day. Yeah, they're wonderful people.
And where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? Doing the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Because if you've
Mm,
got a team
mm,
and you love it and you enjoy it, I think it's just how you do it. You'll do it because it pays so well and you've created such a profile for yourself. It might
mm,
just change how you do it and how many breaks you have. You're on a break now. Do
mm.
you think, I mean, you didn't used to take a lot of holidays in the early years. How do you feel
No.
about breaks and resetting now?
Yeah, I think it's interesting when, a 25 or 30-year-old agent is talking about their mental health because I think, well, just wait until you really get cracking. But yeah, I think if you're 25 and you're thinking about, all you can think about is when your next break is, you got a problem. And I think if you're 40 plus and all you're thinking about is your next deal, then you got a problem.
As well. That's
So
that's a good way to look at it. Yeah, because
mm,
you're saying that. Well, let's just stay on this because I think this is a good point. You're saying that if you're 20 something, that's the time when you should want to get after it. Your energy should be high. You're not having to deal with as many life's problems, maybe just trying to make money at that point. So,
mm,
and you've got more energy and enthusiasm and you've got to carve your teeth out. So that's the time when you should be pedal to the metal.
absolutely,
Yeah, I
that's the
agree.
time you've got the energy to do that.
To do it. And you're more resilient and you can get kicked in
Mm,
the face and you
mm,
don't have to deal with as many life problems like
mm,
family, kids, time,
yep,
health. That gets harder as you get older, right?
100%.
Yeah. Hey mate, you look pretty healthy. What's your attitude towards do you drink alcohol? What's your attitude towards health and fitness, lifestyle? I'm curious because
No. Mm,
we used to drink back in the day.
mm,
I remember we used to
yep,
have drinks and staff
yep,
drinks and whatever, you and I.
yep.
What's your attitude towards that these days? You look pretty healthy, mate.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise. I
Yeah.
I just can't be asked with alcohol anymore. So I decided about 6 months ago, not to drink anymore.
At all.
Um,
At all.
at all. at
So you
all.
haven't had a drink for 6 months,
Haven't had a drink.
and that was because.
Because it might be five. Because
Oh.
I just found that the payoff's not there. It's just not there. If you like, I don't know, maybe when you're 20 years old and you want a bit of liquid courage to go talk to that girl or
Yeah,
whatever,
that's true.
maybe. But I think again, it's just one of those things. If you're still, pumping poison into your system,
Yeah,
when you're 40 plus, there's so many other things you could be doing, and the what it detracts from the rest of your life is staggering.
yeah,
Few
it's
few hours of whatever, and sometimes that's not even a great few hours if you go off the deep end, versus like a whole day or two over the next 2 days that you're sidelined. So not worth it.
yeah. I'm with you, mate. I mean, I've been pushing zero alcohol for a number of years now. And it's
Yeah,
amazing how many agents in the industry, not just us 40-year-olds, but even I've got agents in their 20s saying, oh, it's not for me, or I'm going to have
yeah,
3 months off.
yeah,
It's amazing how much momentum the whole alcohol-free thing is. Anyway,
yeah,
hey, mate, you're
yeah.
a legend. Will I see you when I come to Sydney in October?
Certainly.
I would love to, mate. And I wanted to say thanks. It's always good to see you. Well done on your success. You deserve it.
Thank you.
We didn't talk about hard. I mean, talked a little bit about your sacrifice, but you've always been a really hard worker, a great ambassador for Bresic Whitney. And mate, I'm very, really proud of what you've done in the last 15, 20 years, mate. So well done. Keep it up.
Thank you. Thanks, mate.
Thank you, mate. And
Thank you.
enjoy that break in Arizona. I hope to see you in 6 weeks' time.
Awesome.
Okay, mate. See you,
Thanks,
mate.
Alan.
Bye,
Thanks.
Chris.